Hama, 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 hey, you're gonna be okay. Hama, hey, way, it's gonna be okay. Hama, 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 hey, hama, hey, way,
Hi, Coven. The interview you're about to hear explores the story of a 60s scoop survivor, Elaine Kicknosway, who took her pain and, with her friend Roxy Cardinal, transformed it into the 60s Scoop Network, a safe place for herself and other survivors to share stories and heal together. It's a very small organization, so if you're looking to make a really huge impact with your reparation donation this year, please consider supporting the 60 Scoop Network. Trust me, every dollar that goes to Elaine and Roxy's work will be noticed, appreciated, and used to help people who have suffered the violence of colonialism firsthand. As their website says, turn reconciliation into action. Go to 60scoopnetwork.org/donate, and your donation will directly contribute to healing, cultural continuity, and breaking cycles of intergenerational trauma. That's 60scoopnetwork.org.
You aren't being a proper woman, therefore you must be a witch. You must be a witch.
Thank you so much, Elaine, for joining me/joining us today. It's so important for us to be in conversation and have documents of the voices of people like you who experienced things that we talk about, that we've read about, but firsthand. So thank you again so much for being such an incredible elder to your community and to the world at large. For our listeners who missed you on the podcast last year, can you give us a little bit of info about who you are, your story, your background?
Yeah, so Buju Ani Tanse Kwekwe Wache Sego Olakut Elaine Dishnikas. I'm known as Elaine. Maingan Dodom, I'm Wolf Clan. I come from Pelican Narrows, Deschambault through my grandmothers and my grandfather. Amisk Lake through my grandma, or through my mom and my siblings. And then on my dad's side, I'm from Buffalo Narrows. So I'm a little bit of northern Saskatchewan, as they say, or Treaty 6. And I've been kind of hanging out in this region, this Ottawa Algonquin Territory region, since I was brought here when I was 14. But I want to just mention I'm more of an older than an elder. I thank you for the compliment, but
Yes.
I'm
Not
I'm I'm
interchangeable, these words.
I'm just getting older. I I remember I asked an elder who I thought was an elder, and they were like, "No, no, no, I'm not an elder." And then they told me to go talk to somebody, and I went to that person, and they were like, "No, no, no, I'm not an elder." And then they suggest I go talk to another person, and but then I found out that that person had died, and I was like, "Well, I'm still left wondering." What is an elder? And I just know a little bit of stuff. I don't know, like, as we were talking before, real fancy stuff. Like, I know some stuff, but I wouldn't clarify I'm an elder because that's a community conversation related to being recognized by your communities. And I'm recognized in my communities at different things of helper, as one who drives a truck and puts everything in it and puts people in it and makes their way there. I like doing stuff, and I like going to places and visiting, and the importance of visiting and really, really making connections. So I guess that's a little bit about me. I'm Cree. I'm Swampy Cree. And my grandpa was Métis through the, the the paperwork, as they say in Saskatchewan. I'm sibling of 13 on my biological side, and I'm sibling of 4 on my adopted side. I don't really have a strong connection to my adopted side through choice. But I have a lot of choice in my community of the Ottawa region, but also the many nations that I go visit. And I choose as my chosen family and a lot of uh, healing and building community and ceremony families. And so it's a variety, right? It's such a variety. And then with chosen family becomes chosen siblings, chosen sisters. And I have my biological sister. I have an adopted sister I'm still in connection with. But there's always that place of realigning, like who am I and who's in there and where am I from and where am I going, you know?
Yes, and I imagine for you it's even more poignant because of the 60s scoop. But before I ask you to talk about that, I want to return to this concept of you making that distinction between you being older and
Hmm.
being an elder.
Yeah,
I think it's very important to note that just because someone is older does not make them an elder, but how does one then become an elder? Is I know you say these people are designated by their community, not by
yeah,
themselves.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
is this
Because
something that happens in like a structured manner, or is it just a casual designation?
well, some is like I've seen it in this region once before by a late elder from Birch Island, and they had recognize their chosen sister. So there was a community feast, a community gathering, and we just thought it was like a spring gathering of feasting the season. And then they got up there and they were like, I wanted to recognize my sibling, my sister, and I want the community to be aware she is an elder now. And so that was really nice to witness. Um, and sometimes there's different community connections that will elevate you, you know. But there's no formal like paperwork or application. You certainly can't self-proclaim yourself. Like that's that other conversation. Like it's really important that the community elevates you. That they say, you're a good choice, you're a good role model, and we know that you're human and you make mistakes and you might yell if you spill something by accident, or you know, but you're a good role model and we see that consistently and you're in good standing, like if your behavior has been called out maybe a few years ago because there was something concerning and you've altered it and changed it and made amends and now you're reciprocating that back to whatever and whoever. So it's that constant community care of conversation and not just showing up and taking what they say the perception of limelight. It's really important to constantly be there at not so great times and be helpful, be consistent, and be part of the root systems. Like there's in root systems it's not loud. It's very quiet work. And you can't just show up because there's the camera or the photographs or whatever. It's doing the work and holding your own work at the same time, so that you're in an awareness that you don't completely see yet. There's a good standing and that's why you have hope for yourself. Like, sometimes we get into a low or a lull, but we have hope for ourselves, and And but I never want to say, okay, when I'm this age, that's what I'm going to become. Sure, set goals for yourself. Like walk that block or walk that mile or whatever it is. But it's never to be accoladed. It's never to be, just because I'm there means that you have to do that because that's what I'm telling you I want.
This real level of community care and engagement can't be performed.
No, no, it cannot be performative. Uh, because many of us, whatever trauma, abuse, neglect, emotional neglect, if we see a sign of or an inkling of not real, we'll know it. And
Hmm.
and abuse survivors or those of emotional neglect that have been really working on themselves, not seeing the authentic, and usually there's little nuances, right? And that goes back to the consistency and the patterning, and we're really aware of each other's patterning. And sometimes it's like, oh, why do I feel so close to that person? And there's a patterning there. And sometimes, it's really calling in um, to to say, I don't recognize that pattern, but there's a warmth there. Like I remember one time I went up north and I just couldn't stop looking at this beautiful lady. And then it dawned on me, she looks exactly like my older sister. And so I went up to her. I didn't know her. And I was like, I just want to give you a hug. Is that okay? Consent, right? And she said, yeah. And the way she hugged me was like similar to home, because it's always that place of what is home. And what do you invite in? What is it that you serves you, or what is it that's serving within your home of beauty and kindness and safety? And I'm trying to emerge that because of these different places of neglect and hypervigilance and abuse and trauma and aftercare, and even having debriefing, like really good debriefing sessions with people that know what they're doing. Because you can sometimes you're debriefing and you're like, I don't know if you'll get this.
Yeah. And not everybody is going to understand, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So when someone comes up to you who knows nothing about the 60s scoop, maybe they're young or just uninformed, how do you tell them what it was with the gravity that it deserves, but brief enough that they'll understand?
Yeah. A lot of times I will talk about intergenerational. So there's these different intergenerational moments, and a lot are related to Indigenous or Inuit or Métis childhood, later on Métis childhood. So within Indigenous and Inuit Métis childhood, there was a concept of forced relocation, segregation, um, nutritional depravity. And some of that started in residential schools, some of that started in the forced relocation, some of that started in the reserve or pass system. And then there was an introduction called child welfare. So if you're going along in these different eras of times of childhood, child welfare has been involved in our community since the 1950s. And back then, they were called the policy babies. It was just the beginning when child welfare was becoming more adapt to a specific nation within the Canadian country or the state, because it's all run by the state and the provinces and then the regions. But when you're explaining 60s scoop, it's like this whole thing of like the front end loader scooping these kids, like purposefully scooping these kids out of their territories and away from their family, away from language, away from what they knew as safety. And they always have this concept, oh, it only happened when they were babies. But it didn't. It happened when we were 2, 4, 7, 10, 12, right? And back then, this mass apprehension, it was legally allowed. And so I was adopted and in the foster care system through the AIM program, the Adopt an Indian and Métis program. So I always share, Google that. There we're 2026. A lot of it is, if you didn't know, we're all at this level of, but now you know a little bit. So Google it, do some of your own homework so it doesn't always extract from us to do the work for you. So when we're talking about the AIM program that I was under, but they were everywhere. There was like these different child apprehension, adoption, and agencies, and legal, and all these different places of social workers. And usually the social workers were white social workers or non-Indigenous, not involved, to involve the systematic assumptions that Indigenous families were somehow not fit. We were not fit. So there's a narration of there's something wrong if you were an Indigenous parent. You weren't fit enough. But they're not talking about the impoverishment. They're not talking about the housing situation. They're not talking about the forced relocation or the lack of nutrition or the pass system that would allow people to go get different jobs off reserve. They're not talking about that, right? They're talking about this, oh, they're single parents, there's something wrong. And they're indigenous, they're at risk, these kids are like this savior complex, so that the narration on the outside are like, we have to save these kids. And you're not going to communities by saying, could, if the family is struggling for whatever reason, is there community support? There was none of that. There was no family support workers. If the parents spoke their language, like my mom, Cree, there was no family support or court support or a narration of, do you know what you're signing? So there was papers in front of you, sign here. So there was a lot of I would say shifty, and knowing. So they would involve the authorities, usually the RCMP or the local police. So if this concept of this unfit parent with children, and they would go in and they would literally pick the children up. And that's what I remember, picking us up on the side of a dirt road. Why we were on the dirt road, I don't know. Maybe we were playing outside. I don't really, I was the sibling. I was 2.5, and I had siblings watching me. My oldest sibling is 12 years older than me, so it's not like we were neglected. But in Canada's terms, we were neglected. But they're not talking about the impoverishment. And impoverishment means, like, nobody wants to be purposely viewed as poor. But the impoverishment that is placed in front of you by saying you have lack of food, you have lack of resources, lack of housing, lack of funding, lack of health care, but you're not talking about the funding or the impoverishment that goes to that, towards that. So this societal norm of thinking there's something wrong and we have to save the savior complex, which still kind of gets narrated. Oh, you're just a whole bunch of kids and you were all alone, you were abandoned. Like, I still hear that, and I'm just like, there's certain reasons why today, as the adult I am, I have boundaries with certain peoples, and sometimes it's just like, it's 2026, you got to catch up and really find out the bigger truth. because you're going to miss a lot. And when you're talking about oppressive practices, you're going to miss a lot, and you're not even calling out your own bias. You're not even calling out your own internal racism that back in the 60s or 70s was termed okay, and even back then it wasn't okay. It's 2026. You got to catch up now. And if we're speaking and we're telling you what our experiences was, you cannot come back and say, oh, that didn't happen. Well, it did, because you have an abundance of survivors of different eras: Indian residential school, day school, tuberculosis, forced relocation, ones that either gave up their status or lost their status, and the racism that accompanied that, to the 60 scoop, to the millennium scoop. Like, that's where residential school was, they say, from prior to Confederation in 1867. There was residential schools from back then. So they talk about, the residential school system being in the in the territories for like over 125 years. Child welfare started in the 1951s, and we're in 2026. We're almost at 75 years now that child welfare has been impacting. So are we going to be the equivalent of all those children in care being higher than the residential school era? Like, are we going to like succeed of children in care? And they're still apprehending our kids too. That attitude of they're single, they're alone, they're neglectful, like that whole narration, as opposed to now at least we have more community care, we have more resource, we have more court support, we have more knowledge, but there's still these systems in place that still follow the narration of mass apprehension. And social workers continuing to remove our children with little justification. It's really important that these systematic assumptions really undo that. If you're Indigenous, you're unfit. It's really important. So when I'm explaining it, I always say, I've said it so many times, and I always, like, I don't want to get cynical, I don't want to get sarcastic, um, but I also want you to be informed so that you're also taking the lead too, because you can't just say, "Oh, now I know, check mark, and I never have to ask about it ever again." No, it actually needs to come up, because we were raised in the city. We might have been going to your school. We might have gone to your hospital. We might have gone to your shopping mall because we were raised in the city. So it's really important that you know that we're a part of your community. And then you have the narration of, why does my friend who's um, European descent have an Indigenous sibling? Like, why aren't you asking that? Like, how did that get to be? Like, why is there an acceptance of, well, of course that non-Indigenous family is raising that. Like, why are we accepting that narration? That's the narration that doesn't really come up. So, like, when I was going to high school, everybody knew that my sibling was white, and I was going to a white high school, and there was only maybe 5 or 6 of us that were Indigenous or Inuit. And then the rest of people of color, there was about a third. So, you see the narration of the prominent community not asking a lot of questions. And a lot of people think that they're smart, but they're not asking a lot of questions.
No, we get smarter by asking questions,
Yeah,
right?
right? Yeah, yeah.
But as you say, without adding to the extraction that Indigenous people have already faced, we can look to people like yourself without actually putting that labor on you because you have a website, you
Yeah.
have an Instagram, you
Yeah.
have all of these resources that people can go and seek
Yeah.
out without putting
Yeah.
any additional labor on you. And that's just you. There are millions of other Indigenous authors, artists, creators, speakers who are
Well,
also doing this work.
we do a 60 scoop trauma informed training. Like, you want to work with 60 scoop survivors? Let's go. Right. And it's called Rising Together, 60 Scoop Trauma Informed Training. And it's on our webpage under the 60 Scoop Network. And
Yes,
it's talking about, what to expect, how trauma affects the nervous system, how to identify, examine your own bias, and approach your work, tools to challenge, community building, vicarious trauma, and importance of self-care, and how to create safer and inclusive spaces. And it's working with all workers anywhere that are working with survivors, but specifically identifying, are you working with 60 Scoop survivors? Because if you are, how are you doing?
tell us more about the 60 Scoop Network. I mean, let me say, listeners, this interview, Elaine has very graciously agreed to sit down with me, in part because this conversation is part of our Missing Witches annual reparations fundraiser. And a great place to put your reparation is the 60s Scoop Network. I believe it's 60sScoopNetwork.org.
Yes, that's correct.
And there's a button there where you can
Yeah,
find to make a
yeah.
donation. But tell our listeners about the 60s Scoop Network and what made you found this project.
Well, we're a small group of survivors, specifically 60 Scoop survivors from child welfare. We're Indigenous and we are dedicated at reconnecting or aligning within culture, ceremony, healing, and building community with other survivors. Um, Myself and Roxy Cardinal, that previously went by Colleen Cardinal, but now is name changed and goes by Roxy. And we were sitting around the table with a late friend, former named Leslie Ba, and another friend, Beverly. And the four of us met for coffee. And there was a report that came out from Manitoba through Eric Robinson, the MP, and he was doing a roundtable, and that was the first time people started talking about the 60 scoop in about 2013, 14. And they were doing a roundtable, and I was just like, oh my goodness, like what is this? Like, how did he choose? Like, how come like we're not being told, and that place of feeling real disconnect and people, we were all kind of like comforting each other, because survivors comfort each other when we get triggered. And it was really beautiful. And then we just kind of like, well, let's do a gathering of our own. And so we did. We did the first gathering of our own in 2014, and I'd never done anything like that. And thank goodness Roxy knew, and Leslie and Beverly knew different parts of organization stuff, and we're very grassroots. Like, we did karaoke, we did like silent auctions, and we had a lot of help from the non-Indigenous supports and unions to say, you want to do it? Sure, let's see how you can do it. And we had it over there in the Ottawa region in the small community called Vanier. We had a little sacred fire. We did talking circles. We said, if you can make it here, because we didn't have a lot of funding, we'll provide some food, we'll provide some transportation, we'll provide each other as survivors. And it was a 2-day gathering, and it went really well. And then you never think ahead completely because you're so focused on getting the task at hand done. And as the survivors, and we were, closing it up and finishing up, and we had a giveaway, and there's music and drumming, and people were like, okay, see you next year. And we were like, what? Next year? and and Roxy's like, yeah, okay, let's do it next year, but let's do it on the land next year. You know, that was the bigger thing, right? Like, how do we get back to the land that we were apprehended from? How do we get back to the bush or the waters or the not so city, and so we did a healing camp, and I think that's the bigger conversation where these healing camps are coming forward, but they're making them specific to survivor led. And so we've had a few healing camps since, and again, specifically for survivors of the 60 scoop or family members or the children that were raised by the survivors. And the last one that we had was one for mapping. Like, where did we go? So we've done, if you go to YouTube under our YouTube site, we have we have narration of 60 Scoop survivors talking about their what do they call that? Their migration story. Like from when they were little to adopted to fostered to adopted or brought back and adopted again. Some were taken to the States, some were taken to England, some were, like for myself, I was raised in a family, and for a short time, I was raised in Africa. Like there's all these different, like, how did we get all the way over here when we're originally from a very small community? And then if you go to our page, we have one called Mapping the 60 Scoop Dysphoria. So you can see where survivors have gone. And on our webpage, we also talk about our Dibwewin, which is Speaking from Our Heart podcast. So we have all these different, we're growing it up too. We're doing new podcasts, we're doing new options, legal options. But we started off very small, and we started off um, thinking, oh, okay, well, it'll just be just gatherings, just connect, because at that time, I believe there had only been one gathering in Canada, and that had been a few years before. But, what happens is this perception of, well, we talked about the Indian residential school, so we don't have to talk about anything else. But what you're missing is the grandchildren and their children. What happened to their children? What happened to their grandchildren? What happened to their great grandchildren? And that narration of how were you affected? And people seem to go, well, we talked about residential school. We don't need to talk about anything else. And that's the part that's being missed because there seems to be this um, beautiful abundance of our survivors from Indian residential school. They had their time and their voice, and it was narrated, and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission came out of it, and there was conversations about our missing and murdered in there, and their grandchildren and the loss, right? And we get it. That was heavy, but our part is still heavy too. So it needs its rightful place to be spoken of. It can't be just swept away because you spoke about that era and you don't need to speak about anything more. So there seems to be this concept of the aftercare of loss. Like what about when does the voice of the 60 scoop um, have its time? And there was settlement too. There was a settlement that came through in 19, oh, when was that? 20, like 2019, 2018 it started, and then it went through during COVID, which, quietly got, like, there was other things that were happening during COVID when the world shut down, but they started doing the settlement payout. And there seems to be this like, well, we paid you, we don't ever have to talk about it ever again. But there's still needed conversation. So it's it's uh it's it's always this, where do you get the funding for healing? Where do you get the funding that's self-sustaining, that isn't specifically just for you? Like, how do you get the ones from overseas? How do we find the ones that have been buried, that had their name changed, and we don't know their names now because their names have been Englished through their adoption records. And how do we unseal the adoption records? How do we unseal the foster care system? Because our generation, it was a lot of retraction. And how do we out the ongoing um, healing, the unique healing that is specifically for survivors specific of this generation? Because if you're trying to explain everything to a therapist or a psychotherapist or whoever, or even ceremony conductors that know just their experience has just been working with Indian residential school survivors. But they did talk about us on reserve. They were like, oh, those children that left, or oh, that parent that left. And that shame that child welfare still has in our territories and communities, that shame of, oh, we don't talk about it. It'll bring up their stuff. You're right. But we're adults now. We're parents, we're grandparents, we're great grandparents. And we're like, you know what? I'll bring it up now. And then
Mm.
when survivors, we all bring it up. We're like, oh, okay. Other people get what I went through. Or, maybe I heard something that encourages me to speak up because they're, and that's the joy of being validated, the validation of, I wasn't the only one. I'm not the only one. And when survivors come together, there's an empowerment. And you're right, we all come with our stuff, and sometimes we might, you know, have a kink or two, which happens. And, we don't mean to cause any harm, but that's clarity and clarifying and understanding. Like some people are in culture, some people aren't, some people are in business, some people are in financing, some people it's hard for their recognition that you're indigenous. Like I'm Cree, like I'm all Cree. And some have gone home, some are still getting the strength to go home because of that forced isolation when we were being raised by non-indigenous community, non-indigenous home, loss of language, this attitude or this atmosphere of you weren't wanted, you were neglected, there was something wrong with your parent, that narration, there was something wrong. So you wouldn't want to go back there, you know, and that narration of good Indian, bad Indian, you're one of the good ones because you were
Mm.
raised here. And it's just like, you know what? I want to be raised there too. So there's this longing, this grief, this unresolved grief, or you don't even know what you're grieving sometimes. And so it's just that even the reassurance of validation, it's okay to not know what you're grieving, but you're grieving something and it's all inside. And I believe you.
I'm so grateful that you have this bravery and capacity to do this work. I'm so happy that you're podcasting because I remember last year you had told me that this was a goal to start doing this and for you to be able to spread your voice farther than Ottawa, farther than Canada, and reach those ears that really need to hear you. And you meant and you've brought it up several different ways, and it's something I really wanted to talk to you about, the loss of name, loss of language. You are Cree Girl on Instagram. Everybody go follow Elaine at Cree Girl on Instagram. But something I've noticed you've been doing a lot of is this like rematriation, like this reclaiming of what I believe is your mother's language.
Hmm.
So I guess my question is twofold. Um, why is language important, and how does language fit into the creation or the destruction, the erasure, the extraction of culture itself?
Well, I'm originally a Cree speaker. My first language is Cree. Everything I heard from womb to baby to toddler, it was all enmeshed in Cree. And I know there was probably some English in there, but I was fully Cree. To then go to homes, I went to 5 homes to be Englished within those 5 homes to get to the adopted home by the time I was just under 4, to not be speaking English or Cree anymore. I just stopped speaking. And there was no one explaining at such a little age, you're losing your language. You're losing your connection. You're grieving your sisters. You're grieving your mother. You're grieving your homelands. You're grieving being held safely. So as I open the grief, I recognize I'm still vulnerable when I speak my language. And I don't speak it in conversation. I speak it in song. So I've brought language back to me in song. And now with the joy of internet, my husband and I sometimes go on the different platforms and we say different things because I was just like, you know what? Maybe other people want to do that too. Maybe other people want to hear that or just be encouraging, you know? Um, Not everybody has different ages and stages of peoples in their life. So maybe you needed to hear that from a grandparent or a parent that I'm proud of you and say it in the language. And I'm not saying I say it correctly either, but I know more, like I took in a lot of the territory of the Algonquin and the Anishinaabe. I'm Cree, so my Cree is totally different than the language of over here. But I've been here such a long time that it feels like home. And I I can pick up a little bit more in Anishinaabe than I can of my own language. So there's still this concept of once you go home, you'll learn your language and it'll all be better. Like they're like these quick and easy um, happy endings. And I'm still working on my language. And I'm still working on how to sing my language back to me. I'm constantly trying to sing songs and get the dialect properly. Make sure that I know the translation. I speak to other elders in other territories and it's just like, sing it to me, sing it so that I can listen to it over and over. And I think that's that place of inherent right memory, inherent right memory related to it's our inherent right to know our language, know our song, know our prayer, know our kinship, know the language that loved you because it didn't always it wasn't always um, said in English, but when we say it in our language, it's very home, like I'm home. Like it's like, you get the proper tone. So when my older sister speaks to me or a relative speaks to me and they'll say something, I was just like, oh, that just feels like home. Like my niece will sometimes say to me, I got you, Auntie. And I'm like, I didn't know I needed to hear that. Thank you. That reassurance. So hold on,
Like,
just gonna tell my husband be quiet. Just a minute. Okay, thank you.
of
I just
course.
I just kicked him to the kitchen.
Oh
Kicked him
well.
to the curb.
Give him my regards later, but yeah, you stay in the kitchen for now. Um, coming home in the same way that hug from that woman felt like home. The words can
Yeah,
feel like home, touch can feel like home.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I went to a language conference last year, and you're signing up and you're all excited, and then I get there and they're all speaking Anishinaabe, but I didn't know enough words and they were just like speaking and speaking and it kind of overwhelmed me and I was kind of getting anxious because I was like calling myself in. I don't know enough, right? And then I realized, is the whole conference going to be in Anishinaabemowin and I won't know anything while I'm here because I'm so Englished now. But I had to really talk to myself and really self-regulate myself. It's okay not to know. It's okay just to be around the language. It's okay to be, reassured by your own people. And there's a lot of grandparents that are like looking at you and smiling at you and just glad you're here, as opposed to this old narration of, I don't know enough and I have to answer because you're telling me I have to answer. Like that old part that is scared and feeling, um, I guess, not worthy, right? And then the worthfulness. You are worthful to be just amongst your people. And you're right, you were away for a little while, but you're, like my sister will always say, but you're home now. And that always like, when I was younger, I would like it would catch me. I'd feel like that little person cry where you couldn't catch your breath, you know. And that's that homesickness. And she'd always reassure me, as she'd held me, you're home now, sister. You're just home now. So I guess that's that reassurance is when we're walking in and out of these different places and when we're going to ceremonies or into community events or powwows, it's just reassuring each other, you're home now, you're here now, and we're grateful you're here now. Come back. We miss you when you're not here, you know?
Will you bring us home and maybe bring your brothers and sisters and all of your siblings all across the world, a very broad definition of the term sibling? Will you bring us all home with a song, Elaine, that we can
Mhm.
listen to over and over and over again?
So I used to, well, I still sometimes do. I used to do certain songs specifically that they would help me breathe. Because in anxiety, I'd start just upper breathing. So um, when I'm feeling anxious, I would hum, and um, and then I'd like take a deep breath, and then I would like, okay, you're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. Humma, 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 hey, you're gonna be okay. Humma, hey, way, it's gonna be okay. Humma, 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 hey, humma, hey, way, you're okay. Way, hey, hey, way, hey, hey, way, you're doing really well. You're gonna be okay. And that's what they're known as a grandmother song through Eulalie. So I'll sing it through without words now. Humma, 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 hey ya. Humma, hey ya, ooh, ha. Humma, 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 hey ya. Humma, hey ya, ooh, ha. Way, hey, hey, ya. Way, ya, way, hey, ya. Ah, hey, ya, oh, There you go.
I'm actually like tearing up a little bit and feeling a little emotional because when you were singing, like I believed you. I believed that I was going to be okay and you're going to be okay. And everyone listening, everyone who can hear your voice is going to be okay. Like I believed it maybe for the first time today. That we
Oh,
are going to be okay. Thank you
we're gonna be.
so much.
You're welcome, and I appreciate you asking the ask and the invitation. I really appreciate that.
Of course. I mean, for what it's worth, I am very proud of you and the work that you are doing and you putting yourself out there to be a voice to reclaim the language of your mother and your grandmother, to call your brothers and sisters home. BGWen, I think is the term.
Bijiwin,
BGWen.
Bijiwin, yeah,
Yeah.
Bijiwin. Or Stamote, let's go.
Let's go. And again, listeners, please. This is someone that we know we can look into Elaine's face and know that any money that we put into the work that she's doing is good money for good work. You're not, your donation, your reparation is not going to get lost in a sea of
No,
administration. It
no,
is going,
it'll it'll
go,
help with our podcast. It'll help us talk to other survivors. It'll give them a little bit of honorarium. It'll help us fund maybe better mics or maybe on the different platforms because everything is dollared now, right? And
yes.
we're very grassroots. Like we worked for the government a little, did a little bit of contract, but we're very grassroots. We believe that that it's okay to find each other in good ways. And if it's through the safety of podcasting, let's podcast. If it's the safety of even going to the website and looking for referrals or legal advice, it's there. These different places, and you have every right to. I always remind people you have every right to call your own child welfare file home to find out what they wrote about you. So when you write and you ask for your child welfare file, ask for your all your paperwork, even ask for your live birth certificate. Look at your names. This is your original name that was given to you, and it was given to you with love from the families that brought you here. And it's okay to walk each other home.
I made several notes during our conversation, but the one that I want to leave us on is you said root systems are quiet work. I appreciate you doing the blooming, the stemming and blooming above ground, but for the rest of us, we build we build roots. We build roots.
Yeah.
We build roots. We build roots. We build roots. We build roots and nurture and foster roots. Again, it's 60scoopnetwork.org. And of course, listeners, all of the links to the podcast, the YouTube, ways to donate, and of course, your Instagram will all be on the webpage. Thank you so much, Elaine. I hope you'll come back next year, having
Anytime.
having succeeded in your goals that you're setting now. When we return next year, I know that you'll be just cracking them out.
Well, thank you so much, and take care of yourself. And as they say, bamapi. We don't have a word for goodbye. We say we'll see each other again.
Bamapi.
Hmm.
Thanks, Elaine.
You're welcome. Hama, 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 hey, you're gonna be okay. Hama, hey, we, it's gonna be okay. Hama, 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 hey, hama, hey, we,
Make a donation of $10 or more to the 60s Scoop Network. Send us a screenshot of your receipt to witchreparations@gmail.com. You'll automatically receive discount codes from some of our favorite witchy businesses, and you'll be entered to win one of more than 25 fabulous prizes. Go to missingwitches.com/reparations for everything you need to know.